Today, I'm super excited for our session on building data products with Snowflake Internal Marketplace alongside customer from Flix Mobility. So my name is Sananda. I'm a product manager on Snowflake working on apps and collaboration. And we have Jacob.
Yeah, my name is Jacob. I'm from Flix Mobility, known as Flix Bus, the brand. And I do work as product owner with a team of engineers, and we create services for the core data platform, as well as data products.
Cool. So in the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about data mesh. Then we'll dive into Snowflake Internal Marketplace, what it is, and what value it provides. And then Jacob will talk about how his company, Flix Mobility, puts all of this into action. OK, so maybe before we get started, how many of you, just a show of hands, have heard about data mesh or know what it is? OK, amazing. That's very good. Great. So the core principle, like traditionally in data management, we would always think about centralizing everything, centralizing the data, centralizing the operations, the management. But as more and more data grows across many different domains, this becomes a huge bottleneck. And so this is where data mesh comes in, as many of you guys are aware. And the core principle is really rethinking data not as loose collection of data objects, but really as products that are curated with clear definition, details, and quality. And pushing that ownership not to a central team, but to the domain owners that are the experts of that data. So sales owns sales data, marketing owns marketing data, et cetera. And so it's really based on 4 core principles, as you see here. The domain-centric ownership, meaning not one central team owning all of the company's data, but sales and marketing owning their own data. And treating data as a product with curated SLOs, descriptions, details, and quality guidelines. And then making it more self-service, so every different domain can use and access, discover access, and govern all those data products in a consistent manner, in a self-serve manner. And then lastly is the federated governance, so you can have the same consistent way of auditing and maintaining your data products across the domains. So as you move from a data mesh, central data platform architecture to more of a data mesh architecture, one of the things it makes is make the data much more discoverable and accessible across your organization. You can get one single place where you go as a single platform to discover, access, and govern data across its entire life cycle. So no more silos, no more bottlenecks through one single source of management. And ultimately, all of this leads to faster time to value because you want to put your data to action and get meaningful insights from your data. And this is where Snowflake's internal marketplace comes in. So as you can see here, this is our new internal marketplace where every object is part of a listing as curated data products. All these wizards, cards that you see are individual data products with not just data, but also rich metadata about its descriptions, its previews, the domains that it represents. So let's talk through some of the core principles and how internal marketplace actually addresses a lot of them. So the first thing we talked about is data products and rich metadata. With internal marketplace, you have the ability to not just add data into the product, but also additional metadata like documentation, SQL examples, data previews, data dictionaries, contacts, and so on. So as you can see here, this is one of the data products, US Open Census data. And you can see it has a preview of the data and some objects, but it also has a lot more information around the data dictionary, description. I can figure out who to contact for support. I can also, this one is immediately accessible to me, but I can also request access. So it's really not thinking about data as loose objects, but as a curated products that are well-defined and well-maintained throughout its lifecycle. The next principle is really representing the different data domains. So as we talked about, sales might have their own data that they own. Marketing might have their own data that they own. And so with internal marketplace, using organization profiles, you can represent these individual domains to represent the source of truth and sort of the certificate of trust for your data products. So here, I have the domain called sales, and I can see all the data products only from the sales department. And even in the internal marketplace, you see these little colors with marketing, supply chain, sales that indicate this domain to be the trusted source for your data products. And the third thing is fine-grained access controls. So you don't want your data product to be visible and accessible to everybody in your organization. You want to control that at a finer level. So with Snowflake Internal Marketplace, you can grain your access based on roles, accounts, or even the entire organization. And then somebody can discover your data product and immediately request for access that you can then reject or approve. So as you can see here, once I see a data product, I can actually request for access and ask to give me access to the data. And as the producer of the data, I have the ability to either accept it or reject it. And I get to see all the information about who requested for access, when, and for which role. And the last core principle really is about governance. So you don't want to just maintain and manage access, but you want a unified and consistent way of enforcing governance across your data products, across your domains. And you want to be able to audit who accessed your data, who did you approve the request, and so on. So the last thing is, as you can see in the screen, this shows me all the list of access requests in the past that have happened for my listings. And it gives me all information that I can query at any time to see who approved my listing request, when was it rejected, and so on. So you get full view across all the core principles of data mesh through Snowflake Internal Marketplace. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jacob, who will talk about how he puts it in action at Flix.
Thank you. All right. Now you saw a lot from Internal Marketplace with screenshots. Wouldn't it be cool to see it in action? And we with Flix used the last month to start a very first implementation of that. You will see it in real life. We prepared a demo for that. But before we get to that, a few words, what is Flix? So if we would ask around here, who knows something about FlixBus? Raise your hand. Okay, that's more than I expected. I will ask the question again in a couple minutes, and probably then we will see even more hands. Wait for it. What is FlixBus about? You can see the bus here. Our main message is to provide sustainable and affordable travel. So that's something, especially in Europe, that is quite new because the bus market opened just 10, 15 years ago. So we're just, let's say, inventing that market. And FlixBus was one of the companies who started very early on. It's a German company. It was founded in Munich. And now spread across all the different countries, and not just in Europe, but also to other continents. Right, we are a classic platform business. So you have on the one side the demand passengers, what you can see on the left side. On the other side, there's a fleet of buses and also trains. I will come to that later. And what we have built is the platform in the middle to bring these two together and sell. It's not just selling about tickets, but make the whole business or create the business value to bring these two sides together. That's the main idea about Flix. What are we looking at in particular? So if you look at the whole travel market, it's quite a big market with a lot of different players. You probably know a lot of the logos that you see down here at the bottom. This is kind of the last mile or short distance, right? We know a lot of these providers, but then there's also the long distance travel, what you usually have with planes. And then when you look in the middle, this is where Flix is located. So especially if you look to Europe, where people travel between the cities, it's quite common to take the bus because the distances are much shorter compared, for example, to the US. Right. If we look at what Flix is doing, on the one side, you see it here to the left. This is what Flix does for the business itself. So we do plan the network, we do all the marketing activities, we sell the tickets, do customer service, all around that. And then on the other side, we do have bus partners who are taking care that the buses are being operated. And another fun fact, we get asked quite a lot, how many buses does Flix own? The fun answer is actually just one. Because the buses are operated by bus partners, and then we have it's basically a franchise model, and then the partners operate for Flix itself. So they do all the operation. So if we look at Flix more from the tech perspective, what Flix built over the years is a specific tech platform to tailor the needs of that business. It's quite new in Europe, and there wasn't really a software you can just buy on the market. We had to build it ourselves. And here you see roughly how the platform works and how we cover all the different components of it. If we look at the core process from a customer's perspective, this is what you can see here, and it's also super interesting from a data product perspective. What we see here is our app that customers can download to buy tickets. Starts with the search at the very beginning. So we get a lot of data insights from this part. It moves on to the second process when you select your tickets, so where you actually want to travel. You can add ancillary services like additional luggage and so on. And you pay in the next step, and then at the very end, you get your ticket. So all of that relates at the end also to numerous data products. So that's quite cool to see. Every data product represents literally one of these steps, if not multiple. And this is something that probably not that many people know about it. What you see here on the right side is a Greyhound bus. And if I would ask the question again, who knows Greyhound? I assume, yeah, exactly. Almost all hands are raised here. So what happened a couple of years back is that Flix acquired Greyhound. Still, the two brands are there, but this is basically now one big company. Right. Yeah, to show some numbers to give you an idea what Flix is operating in over 44 countries with over 5,000 destinations. That's quite a big network, if you look at that. And over 5,000 employees. What else we have? The Flix Train you see on the bottom right. So that's also a business that we started a couple of years back to operate trains in Germany. And also we'll come to that later. There were some pretty cool announcement in that business. Using trains is a big thing in Europe because you can easily use that to travel between the different cities. Now we come to the Snowflake part. How did our story of data start at Flix? Well, we started like probably many other companies. It was like 10, 13 years ago. And we actually started on-premise. Very classic. We had our racks in the data center. And whenever the business was scaling, we had to put in more racks. So more compute power. That was quite nasty to scale the whole business. And what we had at the beginning was a very monolithic piece of software. It was the first thing we developed. Very classic with a user interface, business logic, data interface, like you know it. And that was for many years in place. That's how Flix started. If we move on from here and look at our data landscape, at the very beginning, around 10, 11 years ago, we also started super classic with ETL. On the left side, you see the monolithic piece of software. From there, we pulled the data, we transferred it, and was loading it into cubes, basically, and then people can analyze with Power BI and pivot tables. At least the last part is still in place, but the data product part got a lot more important in the recent years. And then Flix started growing. Besides the bus fleet that we have in place, we also have more and more trains. And you saw on the slide before, they had said 10 plus trains. And true, when I created the presentation a couple months back, that was still the accurate number. But the recent announcement, I think it was a week or two ago, was that Flix invested over 2 billion in 65 high-speed trains. This is a lot for a European perspective. That means we're actively entering the long-distance train part. And also that means, from a data perspective, a lot more data products where you want to analyze train data and see how it goes. So the whole data mesh concept is super important with that business, with the different business units. Right, so when our organization was growing, from a business perspective, that also meant more people. So we were growing quite quickly at that time, around 6-7 years ago. We did the same for the tech part, so that monolith was growing and more features were added. We were selling more and more products. And also the data landscape started growing heavily. And the three parts that we were seeing here was, from the people perspective, we started our agile journey. So everything basically got cut into smaller pieces. We were introducing domains. And our monolith were reaching its limits, so we had to start decoupling that monolith, so slicing it into pieces. And that was kind of also the birth of data products. And decentralized data organization. So it didn't work that you just have one data team. More and more data teams were coming in the different domains. Right. I mentioned already our domain-driven architecture. So meanwhile, we have a bunch of different domains for all the different business parts, for marketing, for network planning, operations, finance, and so on. And each of them has one or multiple data teams, and these data teams create data sets or data products. Well, back then, we had to take the decision at some point. We need to migrate to the cloud. On-premise was just not scaling anymore. And the same happened also on the data side. So we migrated from quite a big, say, setup of servers to run all our data business. And we're migrating to a cloud data warehouse, and at some point also to Snowflake. So around 5-6 years, we are running on Snowflake. And the overall customer feedback, or the consumer feedback, is very satisfying. Good. Looking at that, specifically from a data organization, it was clear at some point we do need to have a framework in place. And here, quite quickly, we created a setup where you have multiple data teams, started working together, started sharing their data, but not how you will see it right now with Internal Marketplace, but rather, you saw stuff like where people just shared their entire database with the other team. So it was a pretty wild time when people started working together in one way or the other. And for us, it was clear we need some kind of framework to do that properly. And at that point, we discovered for us data mesh. And Sananda was showing it to you already, but to point out a few key points that were super important for us. One thing was when you think about domain ownership. So we were coming from this monolith, but now what got more and more important for us is that when you create data, when you're a data producing team, you also need to own it. And you need to own it end to end. In the end, you own it, you publish the data, and ideally you have a data set that others can consume. So that end-to-end ownership, super important. And it's more a mindset than a technical part. Same goes on for the data products. We will see that in a second. And we had to strengthen our self-serve data platform so that we have central services available to everyone, what we have with Snowflake and other tools in place. And yeah, super happy now with the internal marketplace to extend that even. What is the core part of it? Generate value out of data. And with data products, we're achieving exactly that. What was important for us was actually not the technical part, because people were creating data sets in one or the other way, but it was more important the mindset shift. Because when you look at the word data product, so to see data as a product with everything that comes with it, the whole life cycle, right? When you have a product, you develop it further, you announce changes, breaking changes, all that kind of stuff. Documentation, SLOs, all these kinds of topics were coming with it. And that mindset shift, we started around 2 years ago. It's still ongoing, but it's going in a good direction at Flix. And then the mesh itself, right? So once we started creating data products, we had more and more of them over time. And what you see here, this is actually from the data mesh book. So these are the official graphics. with the source-aligned data sets very close to the data source itself. And then the aggregated, where we have more and more, right? People start to combine data products, and then also the consumer-aligned on top. Here you have it in the context overall, the data product in the middle, and then all the tooling around. You see data catalog and these tools at the bottom, the whole governance topic. Yeah, and we're just discovering that, introducing more and more of these services. And the current need that was coming quite quickly was about, okay, we need some central place where we register our data products, where people can see what products we have and how to use them. And that was basically the need or the initiation to start with Internal Marketplace. And from a time perspective, it was just coming together last year. We're also talking with Matthias, who's sitting here, and who introduced that concept to us. So it was literally coming at the right time. All right. Yeah, talking about Internal Marketplace at Flix, we had a few requirements that we needed to fulfill. And what you see here, probably it's kind of the central part of today's presentation, is how we technically implemented it. Because what was super important for us was, when I do have data products and I want to publish them somewhere, how can I implement some kind of governance, right? I want to make sure that certain criteria is met, that the data is documented, for example, that internal compliance things are met. But how can I implement that? And we had a lot of discussions with Snowflake, how to do that, how to set it up. And we came up with the following setup. When you look at a listing in Snowflake's internal marketplace, it basically consists of two parts. First of all, you have the share. That's what you see at the bottom. This is where basically all the data is added. And then you have the listing. So the listing that you see in the internal marketplace. And these are two separate things. What seems weird at the beginning was actually a benefit for us, because we were creating or are creating the share with the core data platform team. So it's a central account who is doing that. The customer has no access to that. So we have full governance. We can enforce all kinds of rules and other standards. That's what you see here with the call a function to initiate that. And then on the other side, you have the listing inside the marketplace, where people can do all modifications, add the metadata, ownership, and all that kind of stuff. So that way, we have basically a very good control how to maintain data products. Right, you see the user here at the top, and then on the right side, basically this is then when they access a data product and use that for their own queries. Right, and now I want to show that in action. All right, I hope you can see most of the stuff. We can also make it a little bigger. Hope it's better now. Perfect. Good. So what we have here is our actual implementation. So this is from the production system. This is our production Snowflake account. But because we cannot share our actual data here, I was producing some sample data, but it's the actual implementation that you see here. Right. What I prepared here is a fun snowball fight. So thanks to ChatGPT, created some funny demo data here. You see down there, we have a few players who do a snowball fight, and how many snowballs they were sending, the accuracy when they were throwing the snowballs and stuff like that. On top of that, I created a view. That's what you see here. And it's basically an aggregation per team, and then summarizing some of the measures. So these two items, now in this example, we call a data product. Right? It's a data set, and now we want to register it in the internal marketplace. What we do for that, as I showed before in the slide, we prepared a stored procedure for that. That's the stored procedure from the central team. And I basically define here the owner role of that to make sure you not create data products for other team. You can only create the data product for your own team. Or for the objects you actually own. You give the listing a name, exactly, give some more attributes like the contact, and then here we specify exactly that table, what I just showed you before. We also put it in here as a highlighted table so that when we open the listing, you can see it right away. Right, and I'm running this one right now. That will take a little bit, because what we do in the background, we are running checks. So we see, do these tables exist? Are you the actual owner of it? So we have some verifications running in the background. And what will be the result, you will see in a few seconds, is that you get a listing, and that listing is in status draft. So then, basically in the second step, you can actually go and make changes at the metadata and all that kind of stuff. So here we're just looking at the very first step. Right. So yeah, while this is running, once it's done, we will get a quick result showing up here that the product was actually created. We give it a little bit of time to finish that. Right, and what I've prepared already, we will then switch quickly to the Provider Studio so that you will see how the listing itself looks like. And then obviously also show it to you in the internal marketplace. Right. Good. So what we see here is the listing created successfully. You can now go to the Provider Studio. Right. We'll do that. Switch over here, refresh the Provider Studio, and there we go. The Snowflake Summit listing. It was created just right now. If I go in here, there it is. We can hide this part here to have more space. You see here is the table itself, a little preview of it, and it fetches all the metadata right away. All right. So what I can now do is add more metadata. For example, the description. And to not type all of that, I've prepared it, so bear with me to just copy that in. Right. So we have that here, right? You can also add usage examples. We'll come to that in a second. And then here on the right side, I have more information. Who's the support contact if I want to contact people about the data product? Who's the approver contact for the whole thing? I can add a link to the documentation. So we also have that. Let's first add the approver contact. There we go. So the referee of the snowball fight, right? Then we have the documentation here. Internally, we usually have wiki pages, right, where you can read more about it, so where people document their stuff. Terms and conditions, so what about SLOs? Also our internal resources for that. So for our snowball fight, we obviously have the snow conditions. You can look up. And then super important, we have checks on this one, the update frequency, right? What about the product itself? In that case, the snowball fight only happens once per year. Geographics is not important. The time range for it, say, within the last 6 months. Granularity itself, it's event-based because we got real-time events about the snowball fight. All right, saving all that, we are ready for the first part of it. And now going back, the next part is to publish that listing, right? It's status draft. And for that, again, we have a stored procedure in place. What is happening right now, it goes through the listing. I provide it with the name, you see it in the role here again, and is doing all the checks that we have in place. So what about the comments? Are all tables properly documented? We have some internal compliance checks I cannot show you today, but that we need to fulfill. Also, this is what we technically run in the background. So here, basically, all the heavy work is done. And as a result of that, the whole listing is published. So you see now, listing Snowflake Summit, published successfully. Right. If we look at our listing itself, the status will change. You see it as a green flag. It's live now. And if we look into the internal marketplace, this is another data product, and I refresh that, the product should be there. And there it is, the first one. Right. If I go in here and look at the data product itself, you see right now there's a message that the data dictionary is being generated. And on the right side, you see all the different attributes that we were adding. And at the top here, I have this query in worksheet. And now comes something that is very, very handy. It helps us a lot about the listing locator. So looks like it's still generating, means so basically every data product gets a uniform listing locator, what is a unique name that you can use to query your data product. So then it becomes independent from the database where it's stored or something like that. You can make changes to the data product, but the query itself always stays the same. So you can share it with your colleagues and stuff like that. So that is very, very helpful for us. All right, let's see, the data dictionary should be refreshed by now, and we see the table that is added here. Right, here's the snowball fight, you see all the metadata about it, and also in a little while you will see the data preview, so what data it contains. So we try one more time with the query worksheet. If you look at it, there it is. So you see here now, select star from, and then here I have this uniform listing locator. And if I run that query here, it shows up the table we had at the beginning. Not the original path anymore, but this is the listing itself. All right. Now, let's move on. What if I want to add a second table, or actually view to the data product, right? Let's extend it. So in that case, we have a second function for that. We specified it here. This is the view. You see on the second part here, the performance, what I showed you at the beginning. We will also add it to the highlight view, so you see everything together. And we run that store procedure here. And then in the background, again, it's evaluating the data, is checking, is the view complete? Can we add it to the listing? The listing itself will be taken offline, so it will be unpublished from the status while we are making these changes, and then we will publish it again at the end. So again, that process takes a little while we perform all the different checks here. Right. But you see, in a nutshell, exactly, we packaged everything in stored procedures. Here it says again, published successfully. That is actually great. And now if I actually publish it, because the listing got into status drafted, calling that procedure here, then again, all the checks are happening, and the listing, it will be put live again so that people can see it with these additional view here. Right. You only need to provide the name and the role, and then all the references are done in the background. Right. Okay. So yeah, here we have the listing. It is published now, and when I will have a look in Marketplace itself. Okay, it's still refreshing. It takes a second to publish that. Then we will see also the second view is basically added to that. Right. Okay, give it a second. It needs some time to refresh in the background. All right. What I would show you at the very end, in the last minutes, is something about the permissions. Because you saw it before, right? You can also do the whole permission handling in Snowflake. What you saw so far, this is what the actual implementation will look like that we will release inside Flix very soon, in the next weeks, and then it will be rolled out to everyone. What we will not handle with it in the very beginning is the whole permission management. We have our own system in place right now. We'll use that, but we're super keen to do that in a second step. So it is planned, but not right now. All right, and for that, to quickly show how it goes, we go into the listing. I will quickly switch roles and become the account admin, but you're obviously otherwise not supposed to be. So now I have kind of superpower in Snowflake and can make changes to the listing itself. And we will go to the access part here and say, okay, that listing exactly has no accounts or roles are pre-approved, so everybody needs to ask for access. And then the part here at the very bottom, that we say, okay, the managed requests are currently outside of Snowflake. We want to change it to managed requests inside Snowflake. So we do that here as well. We will add an email address that Snowflake can handle. There we go. Okay, and save that. Good. So looking at the listing and going back to Marketplace, here we will see the button should change now. to request permissions in particular. You see that? Request access. So now the whole thing is handled inside Snowflake. So if I go here, click that button, then I can do the nice access request, say something why I do want to have access, and then my role, what you see at the bottom, at the top, BI admin will grant it access to. Okay, so I want to see, I know, the snowball match, right? So the match results and submit the request. All right, the request is sent. And if I now go back to my listing overview, that is over here, you will see there it is, internal requests. So you go here, you also get an email, so you can react on that. And here's the actual request. I can go on that, I see the message, I want to see match results. You see the account, the requested role, it should be given access to, and then I can deny access or actually grant the access. In that case, obviously, we say yes. And if I go back to the listing, request pending, then the button should change, and you will have the possibility to query the data product as we already had before. Query in the worksheet, and the same will actually happen what you saw before. You see the sample query here, right? And I can just run it. Good. Right, so this is how it looks in reality. All right, so what is the impact at Flix of these Snowflake listings? And I put together a few points. What does it mean for us? The first one is about decentralized data teams. Right? That's how we work across Flix in all the different domains. So that clearly enables that with Internal Marketplace. We have these cross-domain collaborations so that the different teams can work well together. What is currently quite a challenge because we are very much domain-driven. Data as a product. So to implement the mindset, what I mentioned before about the data product lifecycle, right? To think about, you invent the product, you publish it, people use it, you develop it further, and at some point maybe decommission it. Also things like the data contract, so what standards we define for the data product, measuring the quality, and so on. Self-service data platform, I think it was talked about already, a lot to have a unified data product distribution, right? One central platform that does that for all the different data teams. Or topics like monitoring and alerting. So we have one central place to see what products are out there, how do people use it, the whole governance topic. Yeah, the federated governance itself, to make it auditable. This is super important for us as a company like Flix. You get audited all the time from different countries and governance organizations. So we need to make sure we can prove how data products work, what access was granted, and so on. So yeah, these are just a few points for us why this is a super important topic. And then the listing support itself. So people were asking, okay, where do these listings bring value to Flix? It's literally almost everywhere. From the fleet operation itself, right? We operate a huge fleet of buses, over 5,000 buses that are running around. Creating the forecast demand. So we have a lot of teams who need a lot of different data points to create these forecasts. Or talking about AI and ML. We do have more and more use cases like that, and data products make it super easy to feed them. And basically the last part, or the conclusion of all of that, data mesh helps to build your data organization. This is the framework itself, right? And this is the super important part. It's that social part, how to set up your data organization like that. There's no technical thing involved. And moving to a data mesh organization, this part is super important and requires a lot of time. That was one of our big learnings. It doesn't come overnight, not at all. It takes years to get there. And the second part, listings in the internal marketplace, make your data products usable. You do need the technical part, the technical solutions, standardize working with data products, and make it easy for people to use. And that's basically coming here together for us.